That's a hard one. Hadn't been through so much, but the same day that I found out I had cancer, bro, I was called to medical that morning on Friday 13th and was told that I had a cancerous tumor. Okay, so just walking back and trying to process that 8 o'clock that night, when I could get on the phone and call my wife, I was informed that my father had just passed an hour earlier and that they hadn't even removed his body from home yet. That was my day, and it was just like trying to process that. I was like hit with two double whammies on the same day. I could deal with the loss of my father because that's something that we forced to deal with when you're in prison, of losing loved ones, etc. So I was kind of able to deal with that and compartmentalize it somewhat. But in terms of the cancer scare, I done seen a lot. I've been doing time a long time, and I done seen a lot of friends and whatnot pass away from cancer. On the medical situation, just as far as an update, as you all know, I had partial kidney removal surgery early this year after being diagnosed with kidney cancer, cancerous tumor. Going through some changes about whether or not the margins was clear or unclear. We pretty much got a handle on that when they allowed me to have an MRI and a CAT scan. The test results came back clear, negative, for any sighting of any cancer cells. However, I'm still supposed to be scheduled to go see a kidney specialist or to the urologist department. I came to this particular facility and they have a good medical staff in terms of nurse practitioner and whatnot who took it upon themselves to do certain tests and to follow through with those tests. Whereas the previous institution that I was at, where I was attacked and the victim of a hate crime, they knew I had cancer. They knew I had a tumor and didn't tell me, nor did they put it in my file, the test results. So had I went somewhere else and it was an aggressive tumor that had developed into something like 8 centimeters over a certain amount of time, it was sitting on a blood vessel in my kidney, it could have rapidly, easily spread throughout my system. So it was just trying to wrap my head of that. I started keep chronologically journaling on it and the impact of it, so forth. So at some point I'll probably release that as I continue to deal with this. We got a new nurse practitioner and a staff, so we don't really have the same communications that I had with the previous nurse practitioners. As I had an incident out here where I was a victim of a hate crime, where upon arrival at a facility called Real North Correctional Center, I went while in trip gear, shackles, black box, security blocks, waist chain, etc. I was attacked and beaten upon arrival, taken into a hallway and beaten, sustaining injuries. There's a pending lawsuit on this issue, and I would like to give the cause number for that suit. It's 7:23-C as in color, V as in Virgo, -00825. People can go online and pull it up. That's out of the Western District, U.S. District Court of Roanoke, Roanoke, Virginia. We're looking for support in fighting that case, as well as bringing some exposure to that case, because this is something that happens a lot in that particular region, particularly for us New African prisoners. It's something that needs to be dealt with and something that needs to be addressed. For as the incident itself, in terms of being assaulted while they calling me niggers and boy and telling me I must not know where I'm at, and as you're stepping on the chains and shackles that left shackle burns and left scars around my ankles for life, making my legs look like those of a fugitive slave that's been running through the swamps. You know what I'm saying? It's been bothering me psychologically. If you do your research, it's a pattern. Like in my particular incident, they said I did it to myself. Here I'm being transported by 7 or 8 guards, and you're saying I ran my own head into the wall. You know what I'm saying? You smashed your own face into the door. So when you start investigating these cases, it's all the same actors. It's all the same particular individuals that's involved in these particular type of cases. Same thing where video footage disappears. It was an area where cameras didn't. It wasn't a camera, or guys did it to himself, or you being classified as suicidal, and I have no history of suicide. After my son was murdered, and I fell into a deep state of depression or whatnot, I became reckless and suicidal in that regard, not really wanting to live, and this was just trying to cope with the grief and the loss of my only child. But outside of that, they can never say that about me in prison. It's just the fact of trying to get justice for this particular incident, trying to get people to understand that it ain't just about me. This is a culture. This is something that's going on in this particular facility with canine dogs and other prisoners, black, white, Latino, etc., where these type of incidents is occurring. You brutalizing prisoners handcuffed, or you putting canine dogs on mentally ill prisoners, etc., and you've been doing it for decades without any type of real accountability. On the domestic exile issue, being out here in Virginia, just being out here by force, something that the state is now using as a tactic to undermine political activism and separate us from our support networks and our organization and organizing. It's been hard. I'm 57 years old. A lot of my people is older now. Since I've been in Virginia, I lost my grandmother. I done lost my last living sister. I done lost 2 aunts. I done lost my father, having not been allowed to attend any of those funerals or what have you. So it's been a little hard and challenging to try to deal with that, as well as while having to deal with the constant repression of dealing with the state. I've been out here 5 years now, interstate compact by force. My mother was recently diagnosed with stage 4 cancer of the lungs and some other areas. I requested to go back to Indiana so I can be able to visit her. Right now, that's still pending as a decision. They're not responding to any inquiries in Indiana as to my status once I return. Are you going to allow me straight into a general population? They did state that they didn't want me back on a permanent basis, that it would be only for a temporary basis. However, for the 5 years that I've been here and requested to go back, they've denied me every time, saying that if I come back, they were going to place me back in administrative segregation and send me to another state. So I have some concerns about the genuineness of now. Are you willing to say you're willing to accept me back even on a temporary status? I've had my attorney contact the Interstate Compact Department out there, Joel Gruber. He's not responding to any emails or anything. So that's pretty much the status with that. That's why we call it domestic exile. It's by force. The other thing I want to talk about, the targeting by the state, your reflexes to respond in certain manners to harassment and provocations, disrespect, disappearance of mail, a non-delivery of mail, non-delivery of books, censorship, singled out for this and that because of your politics or your writings, for exercising what's supposed to be a first constitutional amendment right to have political beliefs and religious beliefs and expressions and ability to express such, and to be targeted and attacked and repressed for doing so, which is a contradiction within itself. We supposed to live in this so-called great democracy, and these people supposed to be representing the law and upholding the law, and yet, you single out those that doesn't support the status quo, those that critique the system that's supposed to represent certain principles. I have almost 40 years in prison. I've been in prison 23 years for a non-murder case. A non-murder case, a non-sex offense involving case where nobody was seriously hurt and nobody was killed. And you've had me in prison for 23 years when some people that actually have murder cases do have served less time than I've served. You know, you had me in solitary confinement for 13 years when I had no violence for 12 years. No violent incidents, simply because of possession of a phone or my influence, you know what I'm saying, or you saying I'm organizing, which we have documentation. You saying because of revolutionary views, which you're identifying as security threat group activities, you're identifying me as a Black Panther, a member of the Black Panther Party, something I've never acknowledged or agreed with. I do not deny I'm political. I'm part of the New African Independence Movement. You understand? Been political for over 30 years. We believe in the right for self-determination. We believe that Black people in this country is a nation, a colonized nation. We believe that we're entitled to land, or at least a vote to determine what we want to do as a people. And we stand on those principles, the same principles in the tradition of Malcolm X, the same principle as in Atiba Shana Yaki, James Sell, Chokwe Lamamu, Darugu Moore, and the other great giants, and Queen Mother Moore, Asada Shakur, Afeni Shakur, and we represent and we stand in those traditions, and we're going to continue to stand in those traditions, and I'm going to continue to stand in those traditions, whether it's repression, transfers, or whatever. But what I want to communicate to the people is that this is a new era in the terms of some of the things that we're dealing with behind these walls in terms of repression. The other thing is an update for us, my case. We now have an attorney that has signed onto the case that's a human rights and civil rights attorney that's looking into not only my criminal conviction, but also the human rights violation as far as my transfer out here in Virginia in the first place, as well as my treatment since I've been in Virginia, as well as the long-term solitary confinement that they had me in prior to being sent to Virginia. For 13 years, I was held in isolation, solitary confinement, step-down programs, 23 hours lockdown, etc. Indiana is now the recipient of numerous lawsuits on this issue because they was warehousing us on this status without any form of due process that's required by federal law, as well as state law. But again, this is something that needs to be talked about in terms of post-traumatic stress issues, dealing with long-term isolation, the justification of long-term solitary, why we are being punished and kept in solitary based on our political views or our political activism or our organizing, etc., as opposed to conduct that would justify such placement, such as violence, you know what I'm saying, in their eyes, and they cannot substantiate that. And the other thing is, if you're really committed to transforming society and bringing a new society into existence, you have to build infrastructures. You know, how do we wean people and inspire people and encourage people, let people see that they have the power themselves for us to govern ourselves? We don't need some centralized entity to tell us how to do this and that. We can do that ourselves. We have the resources and the capabilities to govern and build and survive and meet the needs of the people ourselves. But again, it goes back to having a vision and developing a strategy around that vision on how you bring that into existence. And putting things in place where we can actually bring pressure to bear on the government. You know what I'm saying? Human rights violations. You know, just the same thing what they did around apartheid with South Africa, forcing the corporations and whatnot to divest. You take Indiana, for example. Indiana is one of the most racist states in the country that's not Southern, that's not in the South. They've been doing what they've been doing for decades whatnot, in terms of the laws, in terms of ultra-conservatism, where Mike Pence come from, amongst other things. White supremacist organizations amongst the police and in the prisons, et cetera, right? At what point can we challenge or get to a point we can challenge, but yet challenge that power? But yet Indiana has the Indy 500, it has the Black Expo, it has the classics, you know what I'm saying, etc. These are money-making entities, you know what I'm saying? This is putting money in their pocket. We need to hurt that. That's where you put pressure at. You know what I'm saying? Boycotting, disrupting, direct action. We want these issues. Why is it that Indiana have the highest rate of this, but you have a low crime rate of that? But you have the highest incarceration rate for this and that? Why does Indiana and the poor communities and whatnot incarcerate more people of color than in predominantly black areas or color areas than other areas, and people with similar crimes or identical crimes get work release or probation or house arrest? Why is infant mortality so high in certain communities compared to other communities? You know, things that's indefensible. Why are people being held in solitary confinement for decades and they don't have a history of violence? Creating and cultivating genuine relationships with those political prisoners and prison activists behind the walls. You know, we shouldn't have to do 20 and 30 years in prisons, especially what I like to call the traditional political prisoners, brothers and sisters that was active before they came to prison, that did the work, that made the sacrifice and commitment, has been in prisons for 40 and 50 years. We should not have to be on our deathbeds and get out, and the government can get the impression that they being compassionate, and we get out of prison after 50 years or 60 years or whatever, and we only live for 6 months or a year. You know what I'm saying? That's terrible. I would say we was placed in the supermax, man. Being locked down 23 and 1, being placed in refrigerated cells, being fire hosed, being aggressively handled. It was, the psychological torture, the sensory deprivation. It was a challenge for a lot of us, including myself. And we had to adapt to not to thinking outside the box and how we could respond. A lot of us, that's how we learn, or where we learn to file lawsuits. That's where a lot of us learn how to politically write and network with outside organizations. That's the first time I ever had been on a hunger strike. You know what I'm saying? For 20-something, where it lasted 37 days. I went 21 days without eating anything. And I came out of solitary into a general population with no orientation, no treatment for PTSD, rage, anger, depression, anxiety, nothing. Although I've been telling you for 5 years that, hey, I got some issues going on, I needed, some type of treatment, some type of assistance, etc. There's been nothing. So you just took somebody out that's been locked down for 13 years or a decade, and released them back into the society and released them back into our community that have issues of anger or depression or whatever else that you might be dealing with. And then when this individual, say, conduct himself in an antisocial manner, if you're not gunned down by the police, you understand, for having a psychiatric or whatever episode, then you on the way back to prison. What keeps me stable and grounded is being active. Challenging the conditions of confinement is also working on behalf of our community and the struggle as a whole. And communicating with comrades that's out there that's involved in the prison abolition movement, the national liberation movement, the Pan-African movement, internationalist movement as a whole. That's what keeps me sane, keeps me going. And I'm just asking for the support of the people, to look into this. We asking for a fair shake. And again, 23 years in prison for a non-murder case because of a cop, because an individual's life or situation is more valuable than a civilian, you understand? And no one was seriously injured in my case. We're asking for letters of support. There's an online petition that people can go to and sign. We have some international support and solidarity where people's calling for my clemency or compassionate release, and so we just ask some people to look into my case and support us where you can.